And now it gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce one of the best friends of the National Park Service and what I would term one of the greatest communicators in America about the soul of America and what our heritage is all about. That's Mr. David McCullough, who is a twice winner of the National Book Award, twice winner of the Pulitzer Prize, has brought me immeasurable insight and joy in reading his works, most recently John Adams, and we're going to get that memorial built. Yes, we are. Thank you. And in the words of the citation accompanying his honorary degree to Yale, this is what they said: as an historian, he paints with words, giving us pictures of the American people that live, breathe, and above all, confront the fundamental issues of courage, achievement, and character. I give to you David McCullough.
It's an exceptional country, clearly, that has as one of its high officials in our National Park Service a gifted poet. I would also like to say right at the start, because I think that credit always ought to go where credit's due, and as my way of establishing for the historic record that nobody, for all of those who helped, all of those who worked so hard, who contributed, who led, nobody has done more to make this happen than Senator Kennedy. In one of his poems, Longfellow said that all houses are haunted. And this house in particular is haunted by a cast of characters that is almost unrivaled by any structure in the country, with the possible exception of the White House and Independence Hall. If the ghosts that are in that house could come out right now and come on stage, you would see, among others, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, Abigail Adams, John Adams, Benedict Arnold, General John Glover, General Henry Knox, General Nathaniel Greene, Knox and Greene being the two greatest of Washington's generals, both New Englanders. The lineup could go on into the 19th century in the time of Longfellow and his family. My concern, my interest today are those people from our founding time who not just crossed the threshold of this great house, but who did things here, made decisions, understood problems, demonstrated courage in both what they said and what they did that affected the whole course of our history from this house. Now, remember, this isn't a theatrical set. This isn't a plastic facsimile or a skillful rendition of a house that is thought to have stood here in times long past. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the real thing, an authentic, incomparable American treasure. And today marks a very great day for all who care about the history of our country, for the city of Cambridge, for the state of Massachusetts, and for our nation. And how privileged we are to be here for such an occasion. If you can put yourself back 200 years to 1775, summertime, on into the winter of 1776, and conceive that the British Army is in Boston And you, General George Washington, have taken command of what is called the Continental Army, which is really only a Continental Army in name. It's New England Army, and you're a Virginian, and you don't know these New Englanders. You don't know these New England officers that you're to lead, or the soldiers. And you arrive here and you unfurl the new flag, and you make your rounds, and you realize to your horror that there's no gunpowder, there's no money, there are no blankets, bandages, no tents, and that nobody has much experience in this business of starting a revolution. You yourself, George Washington, are not, please remember, not that white-haired fellow with the awkward teeth that we see on the dollar bill. You're only 43 years old. You're a young man, and you've never commanded an army in your life. And your officer in charge of artillery, Henry Knox, has learned all that he knows about artillery from reading books. He's a Boston bookseller in his 20s. They're all young. I would give a very great deal to be able to sit in that front room right there where Washington met with his generals again and again, and with Adams and with others, to decide what to do. I would give a very great deal to have attended the dinner party that was held here about January 25th, where Washington entertained the chiefs of the Cogna-Wagna Indian tribe, who came here in full regalia with their wives and children. I would give a very great deal to have been at Washington's side as he wrote the orders of the day or the private letters that he sent to friends and family. Now, it's often said that Washington is difficult to understand, hard to approach, not accessible. That's not so in what he wrote here. The man who took command here understood from the start and demonstrated in what he wrote and in what he did the absolutely fundamental concept of our nation to be. And that is that while he was the commander-in-chief, he was commanded by the Congress, elected by the people. He never varied from that understanding, and he conducted himself in that way through his entire career. He was called at the time the indispensable American, and he certainly was. And I must say, he is as indispensable today, given the dangers and uncertainties of our own time, as he was then. After September 11th, a number of people were saying this is the darkest and most difficult, anxious period in our history. Absolutely not. The man who was inside that house making the decisions faced an uncertainty on a scale that we can scarcely imagine. Listen to what he wrote one night. The reflection on my situation and that of this army, winter had set in. People were cold. There was smallpox in Boston and smallpox in the army. Hundreds were dying of epidemic dysentery in the army and all around this part of Massachusetts. The reflection on my situation and that of this army produces many an unhappy hour when all around me are wrapped in sleep. Few people know the predicament we are in. I have often thought how much happier I should have been if instead of accepting of a command under such circumstances, I had taken my musket upon my shoulder and entered the ranks. But he assumed leadership. He took leadership upon his shoulders. He took command at age 43, as we must all do in our way when the time comes. He also wrote, "Perseverance and spirit have done wonders in all ages," as indeed they have. We should take heart from the example of George Washington, and we should take heart that we are, of course, a nation with a history that includes both soldiers and poets.